Well, good morning. My name is William Kuskin, and welcome to Tech Fridays, our Friday at 11:30 technical session with Donna Hall from Continuing Education. This is part of the Going the Distance program, which features a Monday instructor discussion, followed by Wednesday and Thursday's tutorials led by Continuing Education, and wrapping up on Fridays with this Tech Friday session. Today's session is one I've been looking forward to since the start. Today's session is on discussion forums and creating conversation on Canvas. I actually have taught in a number of different modalities and have never really mastered the effective discussion forum. So I'm looking forward to this greatly. Before we get going, there's two things I wanted to cover. Thing one is I wanted to call all of your attention to our Monday, July 27th at noon to 4 symposium called What's Your Plan? A symposium on education in fall 2020. This symposium will feature 5 breakout sessions, each one on a different topic, and they will rotate throughout the afternoon so that every member should be able to enjoy 4 of the 5 different sessions. The sessions cover things like assessment, wellness, engagement, and so forth. Looking around the Zoom room here, I see Donna will be involved, Rhonda will be involved as session leaders, but really the point of the symposium is not to create a canned plan that we can pass out, but instead to inspire discussion and creativity across the college. So I invite you all to join us. The webpage is up. It's called the What's Your Plan? A symposium on education in fall 2020. You can find it easily on the web. And towards the end of this session, I'll post the address for the webpage. Please do come. That symposium will only work if everyone comes and shares in a collaborative experience around teaching. So,
could you tell us the date again?
The date is July 27th from noon to 4.
Right.
So, that said, I also wanted to give a special thanks to Donna Hall at the front of this session. Really, these Tech Fridays, let's face it, it's the Donna Hall show. And she has led us in a tremendous, tremendous investigation of Canvas. I know that every session I learn not just particulars, which are critical here, but really I learn a way of thinking about exploring this software and exploring these platforms. Donna is intrepid, and I think with every session she extends that to us and shows us that we're not going to break it. And if we get in there, we can make our own classroom better. So I just wanted to offer Donna my personal thanks, my public and personal thanks for making this work and for being here as a leader for the College of Engineering, but really, as much as this is open to the whole university, a leader for the whole university. Thank you, Donna, and thank you for pouring so much energy into this effort. So,
thank you.
Really, yeah, let's. So that said, I'm now going to stifle the palaver and turn it over to the reason why we're here, Donna Hall. Thank you.
No, the reason why we're here is to learn about discussions. I'm just talking. I also wanted to introduce Tomas. He is another instructional designer on my team, and he's my backup today. So when I have the old timers brain moment, he's going to step in and help me. So let everybody know, please, if you have a question, ask it right away or post it in chat. I want this to be a conversation as much as anything else, not just me sitting here telling you how to do stuff. So discussions, I've had a lot of instructors say why. And you know, the first thing I ask them is, so when you're in the classroom, Do you just stand up in front of everybody and talk for the full time and never take a question or never pause for people to reflect on what they've done, or reflect on what they're learning or how they might use it in their life? And then they come back and say, oh, and I actually had an instructor last week say, well, this is a lower level class and the students don't know enough to discuss. And it's like, have you ever known a student that wouldn't be willing to discuss something? So first off, what I do is start a conversation on what would be some great discussions. They don't have to be graded. One of the ones that I always suggest people use, and I call it the muddiest point. And that is just a discussion that students can post their questions. I didn't understand this, or can you explain this better? And then what you want to do is encourage other students to help answer the questions. And that way students are putting it in words and using terminology that maybe a fellow student would understand. I have a great example of that. The very first computer class I took, Intro to Computers, back in, I think it was 98. The instructor was trying to explain the intranet and networks in particular. And she explained it all technical terms, and you could see everybody, and a bunch of people went, huh? And this was a face-to-face class. And so she repeated exactly what she said 2 more times. And of course, everybody went, huh? And she finally turned to me and she goes, Donna, can you explain this in a way that they can understand it? And so I explained it as, think about telephones, telephone lines, and houses. And everybody went, oh. So, and this was like the second class we'd had, but I'm one of those people that really have to understand, so I can explain it a lot of different ways. So that's a great way with the muddiest point, is to let people explain it. Another one, I've tutored a lot of basic math students, and anybody that teaches math, I'm sure you've heard this. Why do I have to learn this? I will never use it in my life. And so why not have a discussion about it? So instead of having a discussion on that week's content and having them regurgitate basically what you've told them, ask them how it's applied in their life. How do they think they will use it? How have they used it in the past? And now that they've learned some maybe new things, how will it change how they'll apply it in the future? So relate it to them that way. What are some ideas you all have that you've been thinking about that you might use for a discussion? Suggestions?
Yeah, I was teaching a women in engineering class last semester, last fall, and I've talked about times, and we have a lot of guests coming in, and I don't ask this every time, but I do ask for the real firebrands. What did how did that affect you? What did you find the most surprising, the most shocking? And Wendy Bailey was one of the visitors, in fact, and it's really interesting to listen to the responses.
Yeah. So two things you brought up there. One is bringing in a guest. So have a guest that hosts the discussion for the week is a great thing. The other thing, when you said women in engineering, I remember when I went back to college the first time, which was way back in the 70s. And of course, women didn't do engineering or I was actually in pre-vet, and women weren't veterinarians. but you could have discussions on how have how has there been a discrimination and how would you respond? How can you, so again, apply it to your job. You have a guy that's just thinks you're a woman, there's no way you know engineering. Help all the students figure out ways to respond to that. So that's great. Other ideas?
So one experience I had was I was teaching a MOOC, a massive online course, and it had a discussion forum, and part of the rule of the MOOC was that the instructor didn't get involved in the discussion forum. In fact, the students opened up the different threads themselves, and I was okay with that, but a lot of my colleagues started entering in. So I started entering in the discussions, and I found that very quickly that I was actually an oppressive voice, that the minute I waded into one of these threads, I was giving the official answer. So I began to back out. I learned this pretty quickly. And many of the threads evolved into really sophisticated and beautiful discussions. And what I saw there, I came up as a teacher in the early 90s, and we were weaned on a theory of decentered practice, where you were supposed to decenter the classroom and let students find themselves. But that never rang true in the classroom because I was always there. I knew that there was a center. It was called me. Even if I was sitting there with my hands over my mouth, I was centering it. And yet, in the online forum, I wasn't there. And for the first time, I witnessed a truly decentered experience where students, as you were saying, Donna, were leading themselves and explaining concepts in terms that made better sense than I could make of it. So I haven't fully been able to replicate that decentered experience in my own online classes at Boulder because it's more focused on who the professor is. In the MOOC, it had so many people that the professor could fall out and they could leave.
Yeah, so on that, what I see is, and the feedback I got from students and my experience is, I did walk-in tutoring at Front Range Community College, and they pretty much figured out I could help them with anything. So I would have 30, 40 students in the room at a time, and I'd walk around from one to the other, but I'd hear a lot of comments on it. They want this instructor's presence in the discussions, but they don't want you to take over the discussion. It's more of ask a question. So students respond to your original post, and you can respond, that was a great idea, and ask them another question. Or ask them their opinion on something, but don't say, this is the correct answer. So you never give them the answer. You just praise them for what they did and redirect them or give them more information or post a video or, recognize them by name and not just, hey, class, that was great. That's what you want to do is not interfere with what they're talking about, but let them know they're in the right direction or point them in the direction they need to go. We actually had a just phenomenal experience. Front Range has an online student union where we have discussions. And we basically start a topic or just have them a blank topic so they can start the discussion. And one of them, and this was a number of years ago, a student asked everybody, hey, I'm new to Colorado, where's a good place to go hiking? And then it evolved to, where's a good place to go hiking with my dog? To, where's a good place to go hiking with my dog off leash? To, I have a pit bull. And it was rather obvious that student said that to stir up some controversy. And it actually escalated, and we watched it. And we were like, okay, we're gonna have to cut this off because it was starting to get pretty hostile, because it was right back when the big controversy on pit bulls and whether they were gonna be allowed or not. And they actually stopped it. They actually came in and said, hey, we need to take a breath. We need to relax, you know, post pictures of flowers, post, you know, they changed the whole subject. It was really kind of interesting to watch him. And this happened multiple times. There was one on the Iraq War where we actually had an instructor in there trying to incite him. They actually had to write up the instructor because he was so bad. And they escalated, but then someone said, hey, we're not doing this. And they changed the whole subject. So you gotta be brave enough if you're letting your students work through a discussion, and especially if it's a little bit controversial, to let them have their opinions, remind them of etiquette and the student code of conduct, you know, at the beginning, to remind them they got to be respectful and everybody's allowed their own opinions. But you've got to be brave enough to let them try it, and then, you know, kind of draw a line in the sand and say, you know, above this. And if you have to talk to one student to back them down, you can, but be brave enough to let them do that. And that's hard, because we had many discussions about, do we stop this now and just get rid of discussions or not? And it actually turned out to be great. So the other thing you can do too is, speaking of letting your students, you know, explain and do stuff, have a discussion where they post resources that they found help them understand the content. Twofold for this. They're helping the other students, plus it gives you a great resource. And I've seen where people will build a whole list of resources based on what students have done and what student feedback was on those resources. So think about that. Any other ideas before we look at discussions?
So Donna, would you say that it's really useful to establish quite explicitly at the outset what some guidelines for civil conversation are?
Yeah. Yeah, and that might be a good conversation to have, you know, with your first discussion. Actually have a discussion on that because of what's going on in the world now and how people are not respecting everybody. But have that discussion and let people know, here's the limit. You know, you're allowed to disagree, but you got to disagree respectfully, and you can't just say, you know, because so-and-so said so. You need to have some references. If you're going to disagree, or that, you know, it's not just your opinion. Well, how did you come up with that opinion? So get them to really think about that and not just, you know, whatever they saw on Twitter.
I think in that context, it helps to give them actually some canned phrases. In my class, because we're often doing close reading the text, the classic phrase is just, where does it say that in the text?
Yeah.
Which is a nice way of saying you're completely off. But where does it say that in the text? Or, I understand you're disagreeing, but what are your reasons for that? Or whatever, some list that's not just I don't know, palliative or cowardly. Really nice ways to say, but you haven't answered the question, or you haven't responded, or you're not following the protocol, whatever it is.
Yeah.
To have them the list of those things.
So,
And I've seen people that get real strict in discussions, and it must be APA formatting, it must cite your resources. That will, you know, kind of limit your discussion. Encourage it, don't say they must. I would encourage that they don't use acronyms, you know. until they've explained what they are, or text speak, just because a lot of people might not know it and don't want to admit they don't know what it means. So just think about that.
So one thing that I do and have discussed with others, it connects to Martha's point and to Leyland's point, is I try and establish in the first day or two some ground rules that we go over. And one ground rule concerns what to do when we perceive a boundary of decorum or civility is crossed. And I discuss quite openly, almost like safe words, how the class can communicate to me, either in class in the moment or outside of class. And I refer to these as ground rules. And I discuss how part of the class discussion is about learning how to talk openly. So Rhonda, your amazing description there of people putting flowers up to calm things down is a wonderful self-generating community solution to tension. But as we know, that doesn't always happen. Sometimes bad feelings remain and they linger. And it's very important, I think, I actually do a whole shtick on this, but about figuring out in the moment how to calm your body and how to calm everyone's body. And that has to do with breathing. And I review that in class, and then pausing, and then resetting. And I find that by talking about that, getting it out there, then if somebody says something, blurts out something about whatever, and the moment is so charged right now that it's almost hard not to blurt something out, right? The moment is so charged that then we have a way of saying, okay, let's refer to our ground rules. Oh, we're supposed to breathe now. Okay, okay, we're supposed to be quiet for 5 seconds. 6, 4, 3, 2, okay. Then we can re-engage. So ground rules is a way of recognizing and getting around conflict is really important. Sorry, I'm carrying on.
Well, you're talking about in-person discussions, right? And I thought that at least
could go for a discussion forum as well.
Okay.
If you established a ground rule that someone could say, I don't want to use safe word, it's a weird word, but someone could say, hey, we've gotten to a point in this discussion where we need to pause, and ask everyone to respect that. If you set that up in advance the first day and you iterate it, then when you come back to it in the moment, we've all agreed that that's the rule.
Okay, so we have a question in chat about ideas to encourage students to continue to engage in these discussions. It's got to be something that's helping them, especially if they're really busy with other things. So think about using the discussion as a scaffolding, how they can actually use what they've put in the discussion for whatever they're doing. So again, it's a discussion should not be busy work. And I can tell you, I've been in a lot of classes where it has, and then it's everybody, you know, doing putting in what they are absolutely required and nothing else. It's got to be something that expands upon what they're learning and that they can use with maybe the assignments or something where they have a better understanding. If it's just cut and dried, answer this question, no, they're not going to respond. Okay, it's you know, I was in it was a digital literacy class, and the discussion was post 3 pictures of, I'm trying to think of it, post 3 people from the United States, basically that told a story. So I'm one of those people that like to see if I can get the discussion going a little more. So I posted 3 pictures of people from the United States, but I posted 1 picture of the last living tribe member of an Amazon rainforest person. This was at the University of Wyoming. What was really interesting is the class told me, how dare I post that? I was shocked at how they reacted to it. They said that was not an American person. And I said, this is the last living person in a whole race of people. And if that's not a contemporary American problem, then what is? You know, so you got to think about that, is to encourage that. And there was a pretty good discussion about it, but it was interesting to learn that the attitude in Wyoming is a whole lot different than the attitude in Colorado. You know, we had it, the instructor say, post 3 commercials that question digital literacy. And there was also a big discussion from the people in Wyoming, how dare you ask me to do this, because I live in Wyoming for a reason. I don't own a television, so how can I do this? You know, so then it continued to the discussion as to there was other ways to do it and why would it be important to do it. So you got to think about that, maybe put a little controversy in the discussion. You know, don't say anything outright that'll really set people off, but have some controversy where people have a good discussion about it.
I want to ask a little more about the role of the instructor in a discussion. So we've definitely used discussion forums in large computer science classes, for the last few years, and they can work really well. They can also go badly if the instructor isn't paying attention to what's being put in the forum. And one of the things that we've seen happen is that a student can post information about an assignment or about how they went about a certain problem, or an opinion about something. And if the instructor doesn't see it and correct it, then it gets adopted as correct. And then I've seen it come back later where a student will say, well, I put this in there and you didn't tell me at the time that it was wrong, so I thought it was okay to continue doing this. I'm just wondering how we kind of balance that, staying out of it and let students run the discussion with kind of keeping it going in the right direction, and paying attention to when things are not going in the right direction.
One of the ways that I've seen it happen is assign an expert of the week. So a student or a group of students who have to keep up with the discussion, and at the end, they would, first off, they would alert you if they have a question about something someone posted, but at the end of the week, they have to summarize. So summarize what was brought up in the discussion. That way, that summary would be what people would use to study, and it's a quicker way for you to see what the students got out of it. So that experts of the week summary really helps with that. I would explain at the beginning, there may, we are all in this together. Everybody is learning a new concept. If you have a question about what someone's posted or you're not sure, say that, in a respectful way, or email me to let me know you're concerned. But encourage them, because there is going to be some disagreement. How you do things, everybody does them differently. So there could be some disagreement. There needs to be a discussion about it. And the students need to understand and recognize that they can help each other and go, I'm not sure this is correct. And they have a discussion about it. But you got to encourage that. If they're worried about what they say, then you're not going to get that. Anybody else have ideas to help Rhonda? Go ahead.
No, I think she was leaving.
Oh, okay.
I have a comment if I can add something. For those that have been teaching online and face-to-face, can you really tell the, depending on class size, if you have a large class and then students that are introverts and extroverts, that some will always say something in a class. But then if you switch it to the online format that all the students can participate equally, can you mention something about that?
So I'm not sure what you're asking, Tomas.
No, my question was for those that teach online. They probably can see that all the students participate equally, and on the other hand, when you have a large lecture hall, when you have 400 students, maybe a couple will not be shy, to raise a hand and say something. So you have a different level of participation among students.
Well, I think that this is a great, I'm talking and I'm not good. I think this is a great segue to the discussion forum itself, because what your question brings up to me is that in the large lecture hall, really it's 80% of the 400 students who are probably quiet. While in the discussion forum, because the discussion forum is textual, it opens up a mode for both for student participation in text. It gives them a chance to go over what they wanted to say. It's less spontaneous and it's more thoughtful, but it also allows the instructor a more clear way of analytically monitoring who is actually participating and who is not. So your question, Tomas, opens up, I think, a segue into the real strength of a textual canvas-based discussion forum versus me standing at the head of a classroom and just saying, well, what's the answer to this question? And then people spontaneously raising their hands, and me having really only a notional way of tracking that versus a really analytic way of tracking it.
Yeah. And you will find that people that tend to sit in the back of the room and say nothing are more likely to say something in a discussion because they do have time to think first. And I know I can say I was one of those people that, I liked online discussions much better because I had time to think. I could make sure what I was saying was correct. I wouldn't have a moment where I go, oh, I forgot what I was going to say. So you will find that students tend to be a little more vocal as long as, again, it's an interesting topic. If it's regurgitation, they will not respond. It's got to be something where they feel like they're going to get something out of the discussion. So on that note, let's look at how to create discussions. Let me share my screen here. So everybody sees Canvas, correct?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so when you want to do a discussion, there's a couple of things to be aware of. The first thing is what you want to do is scroll down here to settings. Click settings. And then click the course details tab. Scroll all the way down to the bottom and click more options. There's two things you need to be aware of. One is this let students create discussion topics. You want to uncheck that, mainly because it gets real hard to follow discussions if you let them create the topics. You want them to stay on the topic that you have, because each topic has a different discussion. So you want to uncheck that. And then you need to decide whether you're going to let students edit and delete their own discussion posts. I've heard pros and cons to both of them. You know, if you're grading a discussion and the student edits it after you grade it, then what? Or a student deletes stuff after you grade it. So you gotta think about how you want to use this. Unfortunately, this is all or nothing. Both of these are all or nothing. You can't do it per discussion topic. So just be aware of that. Once you've done what you want to do, update the course details. Okay. And then you want to come in here to the discussions. And you can see here I've got a couple of different discussions here, but let's look at how you create one. You're going to click the plus discussion. And in it, you want to give it a title. You can identify what module or week, but you should also put some subject. You know, what is this discussion about? So people know. And I suggest using the word discussion, so it's real obvious to students that this is a discussion. If you just put the topic and nothing else, then when a student sees it in the whole list of assignments, if it's graded, they won't know if it's a discussion, an assignment, what it is. Okay, so if you use the word discussion in there, that helps. Okay. In the description here, you want to put your prompt and tell them how it's going to be graded. So if you want students to do an original post by Wednesday, say, you know, original post due Wednesday by 11:59 p.m., you know, replies to students should be at least 2 days later, so that students have time to post, read everybody's posts, think about it, and then reply. What you don't want to do is have original post and replies due at the same time, because then everybody will wait till last minute, put in an original post, and no one has time to reply. Excuse me, questions on that? Okay. If you have multiple sections, say you cross-listed the class, you can actually drop this down, and if there was multiple sections, they'd list here, and you could make a discussion for just one section of your class. You can attach a file. So if there's something, you know, here's an example of coding. How would you do this? How would you change this? Or how would you edit this file? You know, what are the pluses and minuses? Whatever you want to do, you could attach a file here. You want to always check this allow threaded replies. That keeps the conversations grouped together. It's much easier to follow. If you don't thread them, then it kind of lists in the order that they replied and they make no sense. Okay. You can say that students must post before they see replies. So if you want students to really have their own original thought and not get prompted by someone else, you could set this where they have to reply the first time before they can do it. Now be aware of this, because we've seen students will come in and hit reply, put in a period or a space and post it, so they can see everybody else's, and then the instructor has it set so they can edit it. So then they go back in and edit the post. So be aware that they know how to do that. So that's where you don't want to allow them to edit if you're going to use this. Okay. If you want them to grade, you can check grading. If you want them to allow liking, you can. Be careful on this one, because this could discourage posting. Okay. So I'm going to do threaded and graded. We'll come back to the group discussion, but then you would put your points in, whether I want to display it as points, a percentage, complete, incomplete. Most of the time I leave it at points. The assignment group is the group that's listed under the assignment tool. So you usually have a discussions group. Okay. and then assign to everybody, do a due date, available, and until. I've seen some instructors with the due date is the date of the original post. The until is the date that the replies are done by. Just make sure they understand how you're doing this, whether it's original is the due date or not, because if they see until, if they don't understand they have to make that first post by the due date, you will get students that are upset because they post afterwards. So just, again, you're going to hear me say it over, communicate, communicate, communicate. Really make them understand. And that's a basic discussion. Any questions on that? Okay, so you can see here I've got some basic ones I've done. The Muddiest Point, this is an ungraded discussion. You know, I let them know it's ungraded. Please post and help your cohorts answer the question. You're going to encourage them to answer, okay? And I tend to make one of these for each module or each week, so that it doesn't get so long you can't find the answers. This would be a great one to try to get someone to summarize at the end, or you summarize at the end. So here's a list of the questions. So you could start actually making a FAQ page doing this. And it'll also help you identify areas in your course where you might rethink how you're teaching it, or bring in other resources or something to help them. If you see everybody hitting the same place where they have a problem, this will give you, is a great way to figure that out. You know, let's get to know you. Great thing to start at the beginning. Get students so they know each other, know who you are, especially now with everything going on. I've seen things where it's, you know, interesting facts. I've seen ones where they go, give us 2 truths and 1 false about you. And then it's a contest to see who can guess the most truths and false for each person. So it's a little fun game that you can play with them. You can also have them create a video discussion or video reply. There's 2 ways to do it. So when I reply, and we kind of discussed this last week, I can click this button here, and I can actually record up to 5 minutes, you know, set my mic, my webcam, and record. So students can do it that way, and you can do it that way. If it's going to be more than 5 minutes, then you want to go into the My Media and create a Kaltura video, which students have access to. We do in our learning design group. Tomas, can you put the URL in chat for us? If you come in here to remote, and then under resources, we have resources for students. And then there's how to do a video post that you can give them a link to, how to do a Kaltura capture. So you can just give them this. You don't have to give them the directions, but you do want to give them directions on how to do it. Okay, so don't assume they know how. Or even a fun thing to do is challenge your class to have someone create a video that tells everybody else how to do it. So get your students to help each other. Questions on that? So this is a great way to get a community going, and you learn a little something about their background. So it helps you with relating it to them as far as, you know, when you're explaining stuff. Okay, so here's a example of a discussion where, you know, the topic this week was critical thinking. So instead of saying, regurgitate what critical thinking means, it's how have you changed, how has your understanding changed? Give some examples of what where you use critical thinking in the past, and now that what you have learned, would it have changed how you responded in the past? So get them to think about how this would affect them, okay? Again, you're telling them, you know, post the original, responded to, and that your responses should continue the conversation and not just agree or disagree. So you're letting the students know, you know, this is what I want you to do. Questions on any of that? Ideas? Okay, so that's kind of your basic discussions. There's also a group discussion. It's can be a little confusing because group discussions actually create other classrooms. So you got to be really aware of where you're at, and you got to make sure your students understand where they're at. So to create a group discussion, the first thing you have to do is create the groups. I highly recommend you do those first before you even create your discussion. So you come in here to people, and you can create a group set. In a group set, think of it like a folder. So it's a folder, and in it, you're going to have subfolders that are going to be group 1, group 2, group 3, or group A, B, C, or however you want to do it. So the group set is the big folder that holds all the little folders. So when we're doing a group set, it asks you to do a name. So say I want to do group project, so I'm going to call this project. If I could spell. And then you can let the students sign up themselves. You could if you have multiple sections, you require the groups to be in the same sections if they're signing up. You can say, all right, I want 5 groups, or I'm going to say 2 groups, and I'm going to let Canvas split them, okay? Or I can create the groups manually, which means I enroll them into them. The big point about this is you've got to keep checking your groups, because people that may enroll or drop after you create the groups, you got to make sure they're in a group or been removed from a group. So you've got to do that. So I'm going to do project. We're going to split the students in 2 groups and hit save. Okay. So you can see here, I've got 3 students in this class. I created project 1, project 2. There's 1 student in this one. There's 2 students in this one because I have 3 students in this class. Okay. So, and if you click these, it tells you who's in the group. You know, and if I was in this class, it's too small to do groups. But if you're doing a large lecture, I would consider breaking people up into groups. It's also a way to help your TAs monitor discussions. You could have the same discussion, but have them as different groups so that they have a smaller group to kind of monitor what's being said. Questions on this? This is also the same way you would create groups for assignments. So if I would, this project, I want to create an assignment Dropbox for, you know, my project 1 and project 2. You can use these same groups for that. Okay. So once we have the discussions, you get a group. And so this one, I actually made it 3 groups. So it's 1 person per group. And this one, you could depend, I'm not sure I do it with a huge class, but I've been in some classes where they want the students to journal. And you could actually do group discussions of 1 where they actually journal and only you can see it, okay? So one thing you gotta be very careful on is, as you see here, I replied to this discussion, you got to forget this reply is here because no one can see this. Okay. I wish it would go away. It doesn't. You've got to be aware of that, that this, you know, I'm going, okay, I want to post to every single group. This should be the way to do it. Doesn't work that way. Okay. You actually have to go into each individual group, and I want you to watch these breadcrumbs up here. Okay, so right now I'm in Donna Hall's sandbox in the discussions in the group discussion. When I click group 1, notice I am no longer in Donna Hall sandbox. I am in this group's course. Okay, so this group actually has the ability to have discussions, upload files if we had these tools turned on. You know, so that's what they've got. So you've got to be aware of this. I can reply to this group here. Okay, as a student, what they see, let me get back. So when I click discussions as a student and I see this group discussion, again, watch up here. It takes me into this course, and notice I'm now in groups, not on my dashboard or not in courses. Okay, so now I can reply, you know, we can have a conversation all, but the students have got to understand that they need to go back to their dashboard to get back into the course. Okay, so just make sure, you know, this would be one of those synchronous times you sit and talk to everybody and record it and show them, you know, that they've got to be aware of this.
So this
Okay?
is actually a critical point. They have got to leave the group. They are installed into the group when you create it. They've got to understand how to get out of the group, back into the course, and then back into their group when they want to do group work.
Yeah, and they could actually, if they want to do group work, they don't even have to go into Donna Hall Sandbox. They can come in here to groups, and there's the discussion that I had. Unfortunately, notice it doesn't identify which course or anything. So be aware when you create groups, you might want to say what course it is.
So Donna, I wouldn't be wrong to say that the moral of this part of your lesson is be very careful about creating groups because it can get confusing.
Yeah, I mean, once they get used to it, so it'll take I would have a practice group. So nothing that counts points, just get everybody used to it and have them understand what they're doing. And then you should have no problems because you want to allow them to do peer work and learn how to work with others. So especially with large classes, groups are great. They just need to understand this. So doing a little video that explains it, have a synchronous, let's talk about it, have a discussion, let's discuss, you know, your questions about groups, something that just helps them understand it. You're going to find that a lot of students have already worked in groups and they already know it. It would just be new students that might not understand how this works. Okay. But other than that, it works exactly the same.
Donna, could you just go back over something? So if you are setting the same question for all of the groups, you don't have to replicate that in each of those group clusters, right? I mean, no.
Yeah, so when I created the discussion, when I created, oops, see, I gotta look at where I am.
Yeah.
When I created the discussion, and we can edit this one. Let's get into it, right? I could put some prompts in here.
Okay, so every one of the separate groups is going to see the same question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, but you got to put your prompts in here. What you don't want to do is think, I'm going to reply and prompt down here. Just forget the replies there.
Okay.
Now, when I get into these as an instructor, notice, okay, I'm looking at group 2, see what's posted. I can come here and go, all right, I want to see what's in group 1. Okay, I want to see what's in group 3.
Okay.
Okay, then here's a discussion and here's everything. Okay.
Good. Thank you.
All right. So now let's get back to the course. So it's just a matter of getting used to it. So play around with it. You should have a sandbox. I would play in it. Unfortunately, we can't get you, practice students, but just play around with it and then have your students play around with it at the beginning of the class. So once they've posted, and here on this one, I've actually decided I want to use a rubric on this. So I want to let them know it's a real fast way for me to grade, plus let them know what I'm grading on. You can create your rubrics through the rubrics tool. And then to post a rubric, I come in here and this would it said attach a rubric. And now that I have it, I can show it so I can see what my rubric is that I'm using. So content, answering the question. The big thing I see with people that write rubrics on discussions is they tend to say, posted to the discussion by due date, replied to 2 students, and that's all they have. You need to grade the content of the discussions if you're grading. So the quality of the response, if you want them to use proper grammar, quality of their replies, that kind of stuff, you want to do a discussion. So that gives them a discussion. Let's look at the student side of this. Make sure I'm in the right one. And this is the discussion. When I look at this, you've got to let them know there's a rubric. They've got to actually look for it. Okay. Unlike an assignment that shows it to them. Okay. This doesn't show it to them. They have to click the 3 dots here and show. So you have to I would say in this, I would explain, we're using a rubric to grade. To see the rubric, click the 3 dots in the upper right and maybe give them a screenshot. Okay, let them know it's there. Okay, so I want to grade this. I'm going to go to Speed Grader. And then I can go through here, and of course it would check mark someone that's responded. Notice I've got the grade I can put here. This is how I would view the rubric. And this, most people don't realize, see these dots? If you get right in the right place, and I always have a problem getting this. Any suggestions, Tomas?
No, you just have to have a good mouse and try it 10 times and then it will work.
Yeah, I can get it sometimes, but of course, there we go. Now I can, click what I want to grade. It'll automatically add it up for me. I can make individual comments for a certain thing, or I can make comments, big, and then so I can add in a comment overall. I can record a comment. Okay, so if I want to record less than 5 minutes, I can record a comment or I can type a comment. So here, it just lets you type comments, but down here, the overall, I can record something. Questions on that? And then you hit save and submit. So make sure you hit both. So save this and then submit.
Donna, I don't know if this is a good time to ask this question, but maybe before we end, if I wanted to have students write a journal that was only to me and that I could reply to and monitor within Canvas, but it was only to me, it wasn't shared. So it was like a discussion forum between me and the student. Where would I do that? Maybe this isn't the right time to ask that.
So you can create a discussion. So I can create a discussion down here. So you have to make it, unfortunately, graded to get these, because see, I don't have a assign to. But I could do graded, make it 0 points. Now I can assign it to a specific user and only they could do it. The other way to do it would be do a group discussion of one person per group. So if there's any way you want to do that, you could do it that way.
So if I had 40 students and I wanted them each to do a weekly journal, the way I would do it would be create 40 separate discussions and assign them each individually.
It would be faster for you to come into people and create a group. So I'm going to create a group set. And the group name is journal. I'm going to split the students. I don't have 40 students, so it'll yell at me. I would split it into 40 groups. And that would give you a group, and then go to your discussion and just make it. So then when we go into the discussion, all we have to do is say, you know, this is a group discussion. So I would check this to set the group.
Interesting.
And I wouldn't have to grab which one, because it would be everybody. Okay, and that way what happens is then you've got one discussion that lists all your groups so you can get to each one of them. Unfortunately, it doesn't grab their name. So that's kind of hard, and you might want to, when you create them, edit their name, edit the name of the discussion groups. So if I come in here, I might want to edit this and add the person's name so you know who they are. Let them know that no one else sees it. But yeah, that's how you would do it. And then it would address, and you could use your discussion to access each one of them.
So it almost seems easier to me to do something like this through email.
Yeah, you know, it can be where they feel it's safer. You know, that they, you know, they're used to discussions where people can see them, so they might not believe you that no one else can see them. So yeah, questions that should be private, I usually suggest to people they email, but be specific. Do they use Canvas email or do they use your Colorado email? You got to tell them what email.
And Donna and William, I'll add, I actually have a discussion that only comes to me that I assign to everyone, and the students have not been they've felt completely comfortable. I just list in the discussion post, this only comes to me, and just assign it. And I think that I unclicked, and maybe this is wrong, I unclicked this is a group assignment and it just sends it to me. Is that, I mean, I know I have it set up so that nobody else sees it. I'm trying to figure out how I set that up, because I just had it so that their responses just come to me.
Okay, I was having a hard time understanding what you were asking.
Oh, sorry. No, I guess I was just saying I have one of these set up where I didn't have to set up 40 separate discussions I just set it up so that their response only comes to me.
Okay. In a discussion?
Yes. So I will try to figure out how I set that up.
Tomas, do you have ideas on that?
Maybe you did it the first way that Donna was mentioning when you assign the discussion only for the one student, but then you have to duplicate it, you know, times how many students you have. So depending on your class size, you know, if you have like 100 students, you probably want to go the groups route. But if you have, you know, 10, 20 students, you can have it 10 times and then each discussion for each student. But I don't know exactly how you have it set up.
Okay.
Yeah, as far as we know, if you hit reply, everybody in the discussion can see it. So a student can find your name in a discussion if you post it, and they can reply specifically to you. But everybody in the discussion will see it if you don't have it set up some way with only assign it to one specific student.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to go back in and just make sure that that's not happening. So thank you for that clarification.
Okay. Other questions? Anything else you'd like us to show you? Did I give everybody plenty to think about with discussions? Has it changed your mind on what you thought you could and could not do with discussions?
Yes, that was great. And the opening discussion I found very useful too. Thank you, Donna.
Yeah. Yeah, I always find with discussions is to really, you need to talk about how they're used, because I've been in too many classes and I've taken a lot of online classes where it's, oh God, I've got to do this again. And that's why students don't participate. It's got to be interesting. It's got to be something that students kind of go, I wonder what was posted. I really want to go see. I want to continue this conversation. You know, and encourage your students, you know, let them know they can be a little controversial. It's like me putting that picture up of the Indian person. I did that on purpose. I was shocked at the response from it. And I was a student in that class, but it was like, this is so boring. I'm going to shake it up a little. And when they got hostile, I didn't respond, you know, because I was used to that. I just said, you know, everybody's entitled to their opinion, and that's all I left it at. So, you know, you've got to have students that are willing to do that, but yeah, let them have fun with them.
All right.
This has been great. Thank you.
Okay. And thanks for the update that it was labeled a discussion, but it was actually an assignment. And you do have to be aware of that.
Interesting.
Let me show that, because I've had this happen. So let's look at this.
Yeah, and my apologies. I realized I have it labeled as a discussion for students, but it's actually an assignment within Canvas.
Yeah.
So thank you.
And that's why I say, make sure you identify what they are, because you've got to look at this icon. That's an assignment. They're going to submit something. You know, these are quizzes. These are discussions. That can get confusing. So be aware of that you might think you have a discussion and you're not the first person, nor will you be the last person that has this issue. I've actually seen assignments if I click discussions, I've actually seen assignments list in here strangely. So just be aware of that. That's why I say, you know, I should have said discussion here, you know, Muddiest Point discussion. Use the words, and then there's no confusion.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Great. Great.
Anything else? Anybody want to share anything? Okay, we're going to give you back almost, what, 19 minutes of your day.
Thank you, Donna. And I'll just put a plug in.
Thanks, everybody. This was a great discussion.
Was a good discussion. Just put a final plug in for the July 27th symposium at 12 o'clock. I put the web address in the chat. It's College of Engineering / what's your plan, one word. All right, folks, have a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing you in the future. Onwards.